Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. This is the first day of our restart of the group learning program. This is a new start of our group learning program, which is a 7-month program to help you learn the teachings of the Buddha on the path to enlightenment, helping you to lay down a really nice foundation over the course of 7 months to move the mind towards this enlightened mental state. So welcome to all of you guys, whether you're joining us for the first time or you've been joining regularly, or maybe you're even restarting the group learning program for the second, third, or fourth time. There's students who end up doing that. I'd like to welcome all of you because we have a really wonderful 7 months ahead of us where I'm going to be sharing with you the teachings of the Buddha that lead to this enlightened mental state. And I'd like to just spend a little bit of time talking with you to get you started with learning some very basic things before we actually move into talking about what I've planned to discuss today, which is essentially talking about what the program is, why somebody would be interested in taking this program, and then how we lay out the program over the coming weeks and coming months. But first, let me just start with something here at the very beginning that I typically share with all brand new students who start to learn with me. This path to enlightenment, what it is it's based on learning teachings. Then you reflect on those teachings to independently verify them, and then you practice the teachings in order to train the mind and transform the mind. Essentially, the Buddha discovered pollutions that are in the unenlightened mind. These are called the 10 fetters, or the taints, or defilements, or some people refer to them as pollutions. And when he discovered these 10 pollutions, he figured out how to eliminate them from the mind, which moves the mind to this enlightened mental state, where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You're not even in a bad mood anymore by the time you get to this enlightened mental state, because you've removed the conditions that are causing these discontent feelings to arise. And the way that one does that is through learning. You spend time reading books, through attending classes, getting personal guidance from a teacher. You might watch videos nowadays, or listen to podcasts and things like this, that you need to do some intellectual learning, investigating the teachings, and then you move those teachings into reflection, where you start looking at them and kind of contrasting them to your direct experience in life. You look over your life and you look over your experiences and start independently verifying whether the teachings of the Buddha are true or false. And then you start practicing his teachings, things like meditation, but others things as well. And this is what transforms the mind and removes the pollutions out of the mind. The teachings of the Buddha are very different than perhaps anything that you've ever encountered before, where before you might be taught to believe something, or just believe, and hope something good happens when you die. The teachings of the Buddha aren't that way. Instead, you're learning his teachings, you're reflecting on them to independently verify them, and you're practicing them in order to train the mind and transform it. So when you're learning now, you're reflecting now, and you're practicing now, and you're seeing the results now in this life. Because you know, in situations where your mind was angry and frustrated and irritated during your life, and you know those situations that anger tends to arise. And as you apply dedication, determination, and diligence to learning and practicing his teachings, you can see the transformation of your mind gradually moving to more peacefulness, calmness, serenity, and contentedness with joy. The same situations where you once were experiencing anger, you'll notice that your mind can reside peaceful and calm in those situations after you've been training your mind for a period of time. But this doesn't occur through belief. You can't believe the teachings of the Buddha and get to enlightenment. You can't believe anything that I say. You can't believe the books that you read. Instead, you're learning intellectually. You're reflecting and you're practicing. And through that process, you're independently verifying and transforming your mind away from these pollutions of mind. You've essentially, what you're doing is you're awakening to this wisdom of the Buddha. That's what awakening means, is you're gathering wisdom. You're accumulating this wisdom through independently verifying the truth for yourself. Because when we have a lack of wisdom, we will make unwise decisions in life. And those unwise decisions will lead to unwholesome results. And when we have wisdom, we can make wise decisions that lead to certain wholesome results. So if you experience certain struggles and difficulties in your life right now, maybe you have certain challenges at work or with your life partner or with your children or your family members like mom or dad or brothers and sisters or neighbors or things like this, all those struggles and difficulties are occurring because the mind is lacking wisdom. And now with a lack of wisdom, you'll tend to make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. And as you accumulate more and more wisdom on the path to enlightenment, then you'll make wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. I describe the teachings of the Buddha not as a religion, because a religion to me is rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And there's typically one person kind of at the top of this organization. There's a centralized organization that disseminates teachings, and there's kind of like rules or commandments. And there might even be like fear and guilt and shame placed on individuals in order to try to get them to do one particular thing or another. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are about. There are no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship in his teachings at all. You're not worshiping anybody. You're not doing any kind of ceremonies. You're not following rules or commandments. The Buddha never used any guilt, shame, or fear in order to motivate people to practice his teachings, because the primary thing that he's doing is helping you to eliminate those discontent feelings of guilt, shame, and fear, among other discontent feelings as well. So he wouldn't use guilt, shame, and fear in order to help you eliminate guilt, shame, and fear. It's not possible for that to be accomplished. And I describe the teachings of the Buddha not as a religion, but as the natural laws of existence, because the struggles and difficulties that the unenlightened mind is experiencing is due to a lack of wisdom of the natural laws around you. There are certain natural laws that the unenlightened mind is just unaware of. It lacks wisdom of these natural laws. Some people refer to it as confusion or misunderstanding or misperception, even delusion or ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. And as long as the mind has this unknowing of true reality of these natural laws, it will continue to struggle and have difficulties in the world, because one will make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. And what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is you're gradually learning so that you can then reflect to independently verify and practice. You're acquiring wisdom so that now you can make wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. We're awakening to the wisdom of the Buddha, or we're awakening to the wisdom of these natural laws. One of the natural laws that you learn about is the natural law of Gotama, of cause and effect. It's not this mystical, magical thing. It's not punishment and rewards. It's literally the results of your decisions. And we're going to be going into this as part of our program. At different times, we're going to be describing this natural law of karma. You might have heard it referred to in that way, which is a certain language called Sanskrit. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, which people who study the original teachings of the Buddha will typically use the word Gama, because the word Gama is how to represent this particular word in the Pali language. Now, all the teachings that I share are translated into the English language. There's a few words that I still need to use the Pali language, like Gama or Jhana and things like this. There's maybe just 2 or 3, but by and large, all the teachings that I share are all in English. So you're not going to need to learn a foreign language in order to learn and practice and get the results of the teachings of the Buddha. But you'll hear me use this word Gama because it doesn't translate to just one word. It's cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. And essentially the way you can think about it is a sequencing of events. And among all the other natural laws, you're awakening to this natural law of Gama, of cause and effect, because there are certain decisions that we make in the unenlightened state that are unwise. And because of that cause, or because of that action, it leads to a certain unwholesome effect or unwholesome result. But when you can awake to the wisdom of the natural law of Gama, then you can make wise decisions so that the cause or the action is wise, and then it'll lead to wholesome results. We've awakened to natural laws in the past that you may not even be aware that you've awakened to a certain natural law. you've awakened to the natural law of gravity. At one time in our life, as we were growing up, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity, but we were affected by it regardless of whether we are aware of it or not. And slowly but surely, we started experiencing various problems related to the natural law of gravity because we lacked wisdom of it. We went outside and we did all kinds of things, and we fell down, we hurt our elbows, we bumped our knee, we bumped our head, we knocked over glasses and broke them, we maybe spilled water or milk, we broke our toys, we had all kinds of difficulties with this natural law of gravity. But slowly but surely, through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, we awoke. We awoke to the wisdom of the natural law of gravity, where we started learning. By the time we were 10 or 12, we started gathering this wisdom, and we maybe were fully awake to this natural law of gravity, where we learned to tie our shoes, we learned to look at the surface of the sidewalk as we were walking, we learned to walk a little bit more calmly rather than running and jumping all over the place. We're at the point where we eventually were able to ride bicycles or motorcycles, climb ladders, get on airplanes, because we had full wisdom of this natural law of gravity. And that's what you're essentially doing on this path to enlightenment, is you're looking to awake to the wisdom of these natural laws that the Buddha describes. Because the teachings that he describes 2,500 years ago during his lifetime are the same natural laws that exist today. So you can learn his original teachings using his words, and you can awake to these natural laws. And then as you implement them through training your mind and through making wiser decisions about how you conduct yourself with interactions with other beings, you'll find that through that wisdom and making wiser decisions, you will experience improved results. And now the mind will move closer and closer to this enlightened mental state, because it's awakening to this wisdom. So as we get started here today, I would like to share with you a few very basic teachings, and then we're going to actually be talking about the program itself and helping you guys get acquainted with what the group learning program is all about. But before we even start talking about the group learning program, I was interested to just jump right in and start teaching you some various aspects of the teachings of the Buddha to help you with some very basic things. All of these things that I'm going to share with you now, we're going to further expand them as we go deeper into the program in the coming weeks, but this will at least give you a little bit of a launching off point. And then after I share this, I will open up to questions. You're able to ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. You can put your questions into the comment section, or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly that you might have. So I'll share a little bit with you, and then I'll open up to questions. I'll share a little bit with you, open up to questions. You'll see that I do this throughout our classes that we have each individual week. So firstly, let's just talk about what is a Buddha. This is really helpful if you're brand new to the teachings of the Buddha to understand what is a Buddha. A Buddha is a human being. They're an individual who independently discovers the path to enlightenment through attaining enlightenment without any teachers. They don't have any help or any guides along the way. They figure out the teachings by themselves of what it takes to move the mind to this enlightened mental state, where it's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. They've eliminated all their anger and sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings that I mentioned. They no longer experience their mind being shaken up or unsteady or uncalm. So they figured this out based on accumulating wisdom, and it all comes together in their last life, where they are able to then get to enlightenment on their own without the help of any teachers. Then, after they awake to enlightenment, to this enlightened mental state, they then decide to share their independently discovered teachings for the remaining time of their life, guiding countless beings to enlightenment. So during the lifetime of a Buddha has deep, profound wisdom. Because they got to enlightenment by themselves, in terms of the path to enlightenment, they only know what leads to enlightenment. They have other wisdom about other things in the world, but in terms of the path to enlightenment, if they've tried a particular technique to train their mind and it doesn't work to improve the condition of their mind, they discard it. And if they do something that works, they know that this is part of the path to enlightenment, so they retain it. So by the time a Buddha gets to enlightenment and they start sharing their teachings, they have deep, profound wisdom because they got to enlightenment on their own, and they're able to help countless people get to enlightenment during their lifetime. Then, after they die, they have preserved their teachings in such a way that countless beings can get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three criteria that determines that a Buddha is a Buddha. They awaken to enlightenment on their own without the help of any teachers or any guides. They do this independent journey to enlightenment. They then share their independently discovered teachings for the remaining time of their life, guiding countless beings to enlightenment. And they preserve their teachings in such a way that once they die, countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. It's very rare for a Buddha to arise in the world. The last one that the world is currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. And as far as the world knows at this particular time, there hasn't been a Buddha since Gautama Buddha. So you can get to enlightenment, but you're not going to be a Buddha by the time you get to enlightenment. You're going to need teachers and guides to help you along the journey. And you're most likely not going to dedicate the rest of your life to sharing the teachings. Although some people who get to enlightenment do decide to share the teachings, but they're sharing the teachings of a Buddha. And then you're not going to preserve these teachings because you didn't find them independently. You're learning the teachings of a Buddha. So a Buddha is very rare in the world. They don't exist regularly, and the last one that the world is currently aware of is over 2,500 years ago. So the next question might be, well, what is the path to enlightenment? This is a journey of growing, learning, and evolving through gaining wisdom and knowledge that develops your mind into this pure mind. You're purifying the mind by training the mind in a life practice. You're developing a life practice. And through this gradual training and gradual practice, you'll see the results, which are gradual progress to this enlightened mental state. You'll be able to see that the mind's gradually moving in this direction. But of course, you have to do the work. While a Buddha has an independent journey without the help of any teachers and guides, you're still in this existence. You're not going to be a Buddha, so you'll need a teacher, you'll need guides, but still it's an independent journey for you. It's up to you to decide that you're interested in attaining this enlightened mental state where you eliminate sadness and anger and frustration and other discontent feelings, but you're going to need to be the one who does the work. A teacher can share classes with you, share books and videos, podcasts. We can have personal guidance together where you decide to schedule a personal guidance session and I can help you through personal guidance. And there's all other kinds of ways that a teacher is able to provide resources and teachings to help you. But at the end of the day, it's the individual practitioner that needs to choose to walk towards enlightenment. There's no one that's ever going to force you or try to control you to get to enlightenment, because it's impossible to control somebody or force somebody to get to enlightenment. The way that you get to enlightenment is through your own independent decisions in your own independent practice, using the guidance of a teacher. So a teacher can provide guidance, but you'll need to actually do the work to purify the mind and train the mind. And you'll see as we get going in the program how I'm able to help you to learn the teachings to be able to accomplish that in you doing the work by developing your life practice and developing the mind through this life practice. And then, as I've been mentioning and kind of talking about what is enlightenment, we're going to be talking about what is enlightenment and all these other topics here that I'm sharing right now in a lot more detail when we get to chapter 3 in the book and in our classes. But here at the very beginning, the way that you can think about enlightenment is just a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. And once you attain this mental state, it's permanent. So by the time you get to enlightenment, it will have been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and your mind will never experience any more anger, no more frustration. It won't get shaken up. You'll have focus, concentration, clarity of mind, deep memory. You'll see your personal and professional relationships will blossom. You'll see that the mind isn't even in a bad mood anymore. You don't even experience a bad mood. The mind is always in a good mood. So the discontent feelings have been completely eliminated. You won't experience any guilt or shame. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions at all, because that's an important part of developing your life practice, is having the ability to ask questions and seek clarification where things are being described that you don't quite understand. You're going to need to ask questions. So we do that throughout the classes where you're able to ask any and all questions that you like. You can put those into Facebook in the comment section, or YouTube. There's also a comment section there. And then Zoom also has the comment section. But if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions by just unmuting your mic, and then you'll be able to ask questions or follow-up questions directly. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So oh, there we go. Looks like Francis has a question. Go ahead, Francis.
Okay, thank you, Teacher David. I always am very curious about the life practice. Because my background, I'm always very compliant, structured, and way of doing things. Yeah. So I was looking at there a structured way to call a life practice. Is there like a standard operating thing we do on a daily basis? That you'll be sharing later on about what will you do in a life practice on a daily basis toward the journey of enlightenment.
Yeah, when we get to chapter 10, we'll be talking about what's called the way of practice, where the Buddha explains kind of in very simple terms what to do on a daily basis. But we're going to be talking about the Eightfold Path, the first 3 classes after today. We're going to be going through the Eightfold Path in detail because it's a core central teaching of the Buddha. And in order to get to enlightenment, you would need to know this Eightfold Path, because that is your life practice. When you're learning and practicing the Eightfold Path, you're developing your life practice and moving the mind closer and closer to enlightenment. So anybody who's interested in getting to enlightenment with the teachings of the Buddha would need to know the Eightfold Path inside and out, backwards and forwards. So right at the beginning of the group learning program, I take 3 classes to break up the Eightfold Path into 3 individual sections, and then I take 3 individual classes and go through it in detail using the words of the Buddha. So by the end of the first 3 classes, you will have a very broad understanding of what the life practice is, and you also have a fairly deep understanding as well, because we're going to penetrate into it really deeply. But then that Eightfold Path, then you start learning, like I mentioned in chapter 10, what we call the way of practice, where there's 3 kind of daily things that an individual is practicing as part of developing their life practice. So we'll be getting to that as we go forward in the program.
Okay, thank you so much, Teacher David. I understand. Thank you. You may continue.
You're very welcome. Pleased to help you. All right, let me just check Facebook and YouTube one more time. Okay, it looks like we have a question here on YouTube. It says, patience is not working for years. Only anger is helping in dealing with people. Please advise. So this is a question that I will typically answer as we go through classes. Today is all about helping students to understand what the program is and how we go forward in the program. So this is a student who's studied with me at other times. Let's take this question offline, because the students who are mainly joining right now are brand new students, and if we go into the details about the answer to this question, then we won't be able to have time to spend introducing the program and helping people get acquainted with it. So let's talk about that offline. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions here. So let's go ahead and move forward in talking about what the group learning program is. So I'm going to now talk about what the program is, why somebody would be interested in taking this program, and then how to actually progress forward with this program. So what this program is it's a foundational program. It lays down a really strong foundation to help you understand what the Buddhist teachings are and how to progress to this enlightened mental state. It's a 7-month program that's going to guide you in developing that foundation. And then there's other other courses and retreats and online programs that I share that are going to help you to further expand upon that foundation that you're building in the group learning program. The way that I teach it is through live, interactive, in-person classes at a temple here in Thailand that I teach in the morning. And then I also teach online in the evening. So right now it's a little after 9 p.m. Thai time. And this morning at 9 a.m., I was at the temple teaching students there, and we launched the in-person version of this same program. So you're able to join here in Chiang Mai, Thailand. If you happen to be traveling and you're in the Chiang Mai area, you're welcome to join at the temple. Or if you travel, or if you're not in Chiang Mai, Thailand, you can join through Zoom, Facebook, or YouTube, because these are all methods that you can attend the live classes. The live classes are taught on Sunday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. at the temple, and then Sunday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. here online. And then on Sundays, what I'm doing is I'm going chapter by chapter of this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. I'm going to give you some links that will help you to acquire a version of this if you'd like, and you can download it for free. You can take it and go print it, or you can get printed versions already created. So I'm going to be walking you through this foundational book, which is part of a 13-book series. And this first volume is a foundation and a framework to help you understand the teachings of the Buddha on this path to enlightenment. And that's on Sundays, where I'll be going through chapter by chapter, and I'll be letting you know what chapter we're studying. But you can also see the schedule online. If you registered for this program, or you see any of the links for the group learning program, you can click on that link and you'll see each date and which topic we're actually sharing in that particular course, in that particular class. On Wednesdays, I'll be sharing with you, helping you to learn meditation, helping you to learn Buddhist chanting, and opening up to questions and answers. Just like on Sunday, on Wednesdays, there's opportunities for you to be able to ask questions as well. So Wednesdays are designed to help you develop your meditation practice. And if you can't attend on any of these days for any reason, either Sunday or Wednesday, they're recorded, so you'll be able to then digest them at your own pace, either Monday or Tuesday or Thursday or Friday or some other day. There's, as part of this group learning program, a Facebook group, which is an online community, which has about 16,000 members in there now. These members are all learning with the teachings that I'm sharing in this Facebook group and all the other resources that I share. You'll see daily posts from the book. You'll see questions from students, and I'll be in there answering the questions. The way that we have that Facebook group set up is that students can post questions, and then I'll be the one who answers it. We don't have it set up where students can be answering other students' questions, because it gets a little bit too confusing if we allow that to go on like that. So the way that we do it is it's just like an online classroom, but it's done in posting through an online community. So you'll see certain excerpts from the book that will be posted in there, and you'll start seeing those happen in about 4 or 5 weeks from now. Right now, what I'm posting for the group learning program are little short mini videos that are about 7 minutes long or 12 minutes long, where you'll be able to watch those little videos, and it'll kind of give you an introduction to the path to enlightenment. But once we start going chapter by chapter, I'll start posting the preface and chapter 1 and chapter 2. You'll see each day I'll be posting in there. You don't necessarily need to go in there and read those if you're already reading the book, but if you're somewhere waiting at the DMV, waiting for your driver's license, waiting in a doctor's office or something, and you've got your phone with you and you don't have a book or something, you can just pull up the Facebook group and you can start reading some of the excerpts from the book, or some of the questions that students are asking and the answers that I'm providing, which will help you to learn. And you can use this as a method of you to get help as well, where you can post questions and then I will answer them for you in there. And there's other options for you to get help as well, which I'm going to be describing for you here in a moment. We have a video library that's in YouTube. We have a podcast, which is all audio, and there's even audiobooks on our podcast and in our YouTube channel, where you can be digesting the content through audiobooks. And there's even quizzes. At the end of each chapter, you'll see a big table that has YouTube videos, podcasts, and even quizzes. You'll see the audiobooks linked in there. So if you have the soft copy of the downloaded book, even if you're reading the hard copy, if you have a soft copy, when you get to the end of the chapter, you can click on that quiz, or you can click on the audiobook or any of the other resources at the end of each chapter. You don't have to read certain chapters. It's up to you what you choose to do. You don't have to take these quizzes. It's all up to your determination, dedication, and diligence. I don't actually go and look to see what the scores are on the quizzes. They're more for your benefit, so that when you're learning in class, when you're reading the book and you're taking the quiz, then you can have confirmation and confidence that you learned what it is you need to learn, because it's going to email you the results of the quiz. So they're there for you to be able to learn, but it's up to you to decide if that's something that you have time for, you would like to make time for. So I make all these resources available for you, and then you need to choose which options are working best for you based on the amount of time that you would like to spend to learn and practice the teachings using these resources that I'm providing. And as you go in the course and even beyond the course, there's this ongoing support where you can ask questions during a class, either in person or online. You can ask questions in the Facebook group. You can send me a private message, and you can even schedule personal discussions with me through scheduling online. If you go to our website, you'll see links for scheduling personal guidance. And then from there, it'll adjust my schedule to your time zone. And then it will send me a notification of you having scheduled an appointment, and then we'll meet in Zoom, and it'll be one-on-one discussion, because these classes I teach to a certain level of detail. But then as you guys ask questions, I will go deeper and deeper and deeper into the content in these classes. But then even with that, there are certain challenges that you might have in life that you need help with, and you might need personal guidance. Like the individual asked the question today about something that they're challenged with. In certain classes, once we get going, I'll be able to answer those kinds of questions in class. But there's going to be some times where you need to have a longer discussion, or you might need to share something that's more private and you'd like to talk more one-on-one. And anything that you share with me, you're just sharing it with me. I'm not sharing it with anybody else. Even people that I know, like my wife or my friends or my family or anything like that, anything you share with me just stays with me. So you have the opportunity for somebody to get a chance to know you and what you're experiencing in life. And then I will share with you teachings from the Buddha that will help you in your life. I never tell you what to do. I never make decisions for you about what you should or shouldn't do. Instead, if you're contemplating a certain decision and there's kind of 2 or 3 different options, I will share with you, based on the teachings of the Buddha, those 2 or 3 different options, and then you make the decision that you feel is best for you. In addition to consulting with me, you might consult with your parents or friends or your life partner or other people close to you. So a Buddhist teacher is essentially like a life coach. We don't charge money. We don't expect anything from you. We don't want anything from you. But we're here to share the teachings of the Buddha to help you improve the condition of your mind and the condition of your life. And you have this ability to schedule personal discussions where you need help. And you can schedule as many of those as you like. There's no limit to the number that you can schedule, whether it's now at the beginning of the group learning program. Maybe you would like to talk with me a little bit and get to know me, or have me get to know you, or maybe as you get going, there are certain challenges that you're encountering, or maybe you need to ask clarification questions that you'd rather ask privately. So that's always available to you. You can just go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, and you'll see the ability to schedule those. And then we'll just meet here in Zoom and be able to talk privately. And then throughout the year, I have various courses and retreats here in Thailand or in other parts of the world as I might travel around. So if you're interested in attending a live class where we're sitting in an actual classroom together, then you can look at the website for the classes, courses, and retreats. And you can even look at the website for the online resources there too, because there's a bunch of online resources that I share above and beyond the YouTube videos, the podcast, the audiobooks, and quizzes. You're going to see other online resources there on the website as well. So the website is like a central hub, and everything is connected into it from there. Then let's talk about why somebody might be interested in learning in this group learning program. Well, the main goal of the teachings of the Buddha is to help you train your mind to attain this enlightened mental state. And as I've already mentioned, this enlightened mental state is where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind is permanently in this mental state, and it never reverts back to experiencing those discontent feelings again. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you've eliminated all the discontent feelings. Sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fears, boredom, loneliness, shyness, jealousy, resentment, stress, anxiety. All of these and others are completely eliminated from the mind. You don't even have the slightest displeasure in the mind. You'll notice that you'll be able to experience a peaceful life where when you meet with challenges, you'll be able to face those challenges with wisdom. Where now, when you meet certain challenges in life, you might look at them as a problem and you might be really struggling and having difficulties with something that you're encountering in your life. And that's just because there's a lack of wisdom. You're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong necessarily. The Buddhist teachings aren't about blaming people of who's at fault or who's right or wrong. Instead, he's providing guidance with you that helps you meet these challenges and helps you meet these struggles so that you can cultivate wisdom and overcome those struggles. Where oftentimes what happens in the unenlightened state is when you're struggling and you're having difficulties, you might try to run away from the problem or walk away from the problem or turn away from the problem. And as long as you keep turning away from the problem, that problem will continue to repeat over and over and over again. So if you tend to see the same problems reoccurring in your life over and over and over again, this is just because you haven't cultivated the wisdom that you need in order to overcome that challenge. So what the teachings of the Buddha are about is, instead of walking away from a problem, is that you turn around and you walk towards it. And now you have somebody like me to support you and help you to cultivate the wisdom to overcome this obstacle, so that then, having cultivated the wisdom, it won't keep repeating over and over and over and over again. So you can overcome the struggles and difficulties in your life and get to the point where you've cultivated wisdom, and now you can experience this peaceful and joyful mind, but also a peaceful and joyful life. And this is where you'll see your personal and professional relationships will blossom. Because in the unenlightened state, what we tend to do when we experience sadness and anger and other painful feelings is we tend to push people out of our life, and we think that that's going to solve the problem. And when we push that person out of our life, the mind is confused and misunderstanding, and it thinks that that solves the problem. But if you look back, it really doesn't solve the problem when you push people out of your life, because you just get irritated and angry about something else. If the problem was this person, and pushing the person or pushing the situation out of your life is going to solve the problem, then as soon as you push that person or situation out of your life, you wouldn't get angry anymore. But you still get irritated, you still get frustrated, because you haven't fully understood what the actual problem is. And then what we tend to do when we don't understand the problem is we also become bitter and harsh or hostile or aggressive towards people that are in our life, because the mind is falsely believing that those painful feelings are coming from this other person. So you will tend to be bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive towards people, and then they will choose to leave out of your life. Or the other thing you might do is you might put your expectations on a certain person, trying to force them or control them to do things your way, thinking that if you can just get them to do things your way, then everything in the world would be perfect. But the only problem with this is that it doesn't work, because there's 8 billion people in the world, and you can't get 8 billion people to do things your way. So as long as you're pushing people away, as long as you're becoming bitter and harsh or aggressive, as long as you're putting your expectations on people, you can't live harmoniously with all beings. So the number of people that you're able to spend time with becomes fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. And what this path is about doing the inner work to be able to heal from what hurt you, so that you never need to hurt again. That you heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt again. This is the inner work that you're doing as part of this path to enlightenment. And as you focus on your own mind and doing this inner work, this development, this growth, this evolution of your mind, then you can get to a point where your personal and professional relationships are improved and they're blossoming because you no longer have this harshness and this resentment or this hostility and bitterness in your relationships. Right now, of course, you probably have situations where that's occurring, but you can overcome that with wisdom. And that's what the teachings of the Buddha are providing you. He's not providing you rules or commandments or punishments and rewards. He's providing you real solutions that are going to help you cultivate wisdom to then face those struggles and difficulties and challenges so that you can overcome them with wisdom. And then as you're doing this and you're lifting out the pollution out of your mind, those 10 fetters or 10 taints or defilements or pollutions, as you're eradicating that out of the mind, you'll see that there'll be increased focus, concentration, clarity of mind, and deeper memory. The mind will come to the middle where it will be performing optimally, and you'll be able to see that the condition of the mind and the condition of your life is gradually improving. And you'll know that you're walking closer and closer to enlightenment. But of course, you need to do the work to be able to do this. It's great that you show up to classes. It's great that you're reading the book, perhaps. And these two things are important because there are certain things that I teach in the classes that aren't in the book, and there are certain things in the book that aren't in the classes. So you're going to need to read and come to class. But as you're doing this, you need to then also apply dedication and diligence outside of class where you're meditating, which is what we're going to start on Wednesday. I'm going to help you develop your practice. And as I mentioned, if you can't attend on Wednesday, the recording will be there for you right after class that you can then use that on Wednesday evening or Thursday or some other day that's convenient for you. So you're going to need to do some work outside of class, but it's well worth it because you end up seeing the mind move to this improved condition and your relationships improve as well. And then the teaching on the cycle of rebirth that the Buddha shares that you may or may not be familiar with right now is that by the time your mind gets to enlightenment, you won't experience this continuous rebirth. And what I shared at the beginning of the class, where I share with people not to believe anything, including the cycle of rebirth. You should never believe any of the teachings at all. So we will be discussing the cycle of rebirth by the time we get to chapter 20. There's a little bit of content there that I will share, and that's probably a good 5-6 months away from now. But you need to focus first on the core central teachings to be able to get started with a foundation on the path to enlightenment. And then later in your development, that's a better time to start approaching the cycle of rebirth. So what I encourage students to do is set aside the teachings on the cycle of rebirth when they first start, but just know that the Buddha taught the cycle of rebirth because this is the truth and this is what is truly occurring. But right now you just may not have approached it and you may not have tried to understand it. So therefore your mind doesn't quite understand it at this particular time. But remember, as I said, you don't believe anything, including the cycle of rebirth. And the reason why you can set it aside is because what's happened in the past in terms of our countless rebirths, it's in the past. It doesn't matter at this point. It's in the past. And what may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. So right now, in the present moment, you're in this human existence. The mind is discontent. It's experiencing sadness, anger, frustration, and other discontent feelings. So let's be sure we focus on the core central teachings to help you overcome those discontent feelings. Then you can get to enlightenment. And having gotten to enlightenment, you will escape the cycle of rebirth. That's one of the benefits. Because while we tend to focus on the positive sides of life, and that's really helpful to focus on the positive things in life, there's certain challenges, certain miseries, certain despair, certain grief that we've experienced in life that perhaps we're not interested in experiencing ever again. And if we aren't doing the training and we aren't doing the development of the mind, then not only are we experiencing those same situations over and over in this life, but then there's the potential to be reborn and experience it in future lives as well. So you can escape all of this discontent feelings in this life, get to this enlightened mental state, enjoy the rest of this life with the peace and joy. And then by the time you have done that, it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years that you'll see the condition of the mind is constantly in a good mood. You're always peaceful, always joyful, and you will have confidence that you're not coming back to experience this type of displeasure and despair that you experienced at one time, by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't be experiencing that anymore. And you know that you won't ever experience it ever again because you fully transformed the mind. So let me pause here and see what questions you guys have, if any at all. Again, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions that you like. It looks like Francis has a question here in Zoom. I'll just read it. It says, is these group learning classes meet online on every Sundays once a week, and the Wednesdays online classes are for guided meditation? So I'm going to share with you the schedule towards the end of this class, Francis. But yes, we do meet every Sunday and we do meet every Wednesday. But let me wait until we get to the end of this class where I have a nice visual aid to help you guys see what the future holds in terms of the classes that I'll be sharing with you. All right, we have a question here in Facebook. It says, I believe that there is a cycle of rebirth, but how can we verify the cycle of rebirth? That's something that I'm going to get to as part of this program, but you independently verify all the teachings of the Buddha. I will be walking you guys through starting next week on Sunday. I will help you to learn certain teachings. I will help you to independently verify it through your reflections, and then I will help you understand how to practice it. And the cycle of rebirth is one of those things. And I will approach that in chapter 20 and help you to understand it there, rather than talk about it right now, because it's going to take some time to help me explain it to you and then show you how to independently verify it. So since today is about getting you started with understanding the class in this program, I'm going to stay focused on that, but feel free to share that same question when we get to chapter 20, which again is about 5 or 6 months from now. Or if you would like to learn it sooner, you can always schedule a personal guided session, or you can post a question in the Facebook group. You can send a private message. But here at the beginning of this group learning program, I'm going to stay really focused on helping people get started with a foundation, and we're going to set the cycle of rebirth to the side. Here's some questions coming in on YouTube. Do you believe that the perception is a choice? Do we choose how we view things, or is it automatic based on our previous life experience? Maybe a better question for later. We can talk about this a little bit now, James. What you experience in terms of your perception of life and the way you view the world, it's a result of your decisions. So if we have a very heavily polluted mind, when we look out at the world, we're going to see the world in that polluted way. It's like looking out at the world through a dirty window. And now when you're looking out at the world through this dirty window, which the pollution is in your own mind, the world looks very dirty. But what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is you're cleaning off your window so that now you can look out at the world through this clear window. And having trained your mind and gotten rid of the pollution of mind, you can look out at the world through this nice clean window. And that's what is the result of your decisions. We either are walking towards the darkness or we're walking towards the light. Walking towards the darkness is to go deeper and deeper into pollution and unwise decisions. Walking towards the light is walking towards wisdom and improved decision making. And it's up to us to decide which direction we walk. Each individual person is choosing for themselves. Do we walk towards the darkness and continued unwise decisions, or do we walk towards the light in cultivating wisdom and making wise decisions? So we choose how we perceive the world. Here's another question from Becky. Which book should I start with? Thank you. We're going to start with volume 1. In fact, I think the very next slide, yes, we can continue on in our class since it looks like those were all the questions. The book that you're interested in acquiring, and this is the how of the group learning program, is this first book, which is volume 1 of the book series. The book series is titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. And this first book is titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, Volume 1. You can get this book for free by going to the website and downloading it, and you can read it right online on your device if you like. You could take that file and go print it if you like, or if you would like a nice printed copy, they're available on Amazon, where you can purchase them through Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. If you're here in Chiang Mai, I also have them at the temple as well. You can come by the temple and purchase them there. So essentially the way that I have it set up is that the purchasing part is just essentially to reimburse for the printing costs. I provide all these resources available to you at no cost. So depending on if you're comfortable with a soft copy or hard copy, you can acquire it by going to this website, buddhadailywisdom.com/free Buddha books. Or you can just remember buddhadailywisdom.com, and then from there there's a link that says free books, and you can just download it from there. And then also there's a link to Amazon if you would like to go to Amazon. And from that same page, if you would like to access the audiobook, you'll see the link to the audiobook for volume 1 as well. And the way that I did the audiobook in Spotify and on YouTube is that I have the text displaying on the screen, and then you hear me saying it too. So you can follow along and read it, and you can listen to the audiobook as well, which will really help with comprehension. If you listen to the podcast on any other platform, you're just going to hear the audio. But from Spotify and YouTube, you can see the book and you can hear it at the same time, which really helps with comprehension and retention of the teachings. So between reading this book, either before and or after class, and coming to the class, you'll build up your foundation. And some students will find that reading before class is most beneficial. Some students will find that reading after class is more beneficial. And some people will find reading before and after is wonderful and helpful. It really depends on your learning methods and your style and how your mind functions and how much time you have. One of the things that you're learning on this path to enlightenment is trying to understand how this mind of yours is functioning, how it works, and what kind of makes it tick. For example, when I was in college, for the vast majority of my classes, I knew that I had to show up to the class. I had one of the best attendance records in probably our entire college because I never missed a class, because I knew that being in class, that's how I would learn, is coming to class. And then I would tend to read the book after class. But there were certain classes where I need to read the book before and then attend the class. And then there were other classes that I was really challenged in that I would read before, I would go to class, and then I would read afterwards as well. So you're going to need to find what's working for your particular mind and what works best. But it's this book that you would like to get, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, Volume 1. And you'll see it as the very first book on our webpage that has all of our learning resources. On that same page, you'll see all 13 books. You don't necessarily need to download them all right now. You can just get the first book. But then you're also going to see other resources as well. You're going to see a picture of the Buddha, a high resolution picture. You're going to see a one-page chanting sheet. You're going to see the slides that I use. I actually have them uploaded there as a PDF. You're going to see a chart which has kind of like the teachings in summary form. You're going to see various resources in that location, and I put those out there for you guys to be able to access them and make it easy for you to be able to learn and grow on the path to enlightenment. Then let's talk some more about the how of this program. So one chapter a week is essentially what I'm going to be covering as we go through the group learning program in this live, interactive, in-person or online classes at the temple or in Zoom, or you can watch through live streaming through Facebook and YouTube. And these classes are live 9 a.m. at the temple and 9 p.m. here online. And if you miss any of these classes, which I'm sure you will over a 7-month period, they're recorded and you can watch the recording because they're available for replay. Remember that this is an independent study. It's an independent journey where you're reading the book, listening to the audiobook, watching videos, listening to podcasts, taking quizzes, and asking questions. And again, you need to find the right mix of what's working for you based on the amount of time that you would like to devote. The classes themselves, they're anywhere from about an hour per class. Some of the classes might go to an hour and a half or 2 hours. I think an hour and a half is kind of typical, is what the classes tend to be. But there's definitely some that are maybe an hour, and there might be some that go a little bit closer to 2 hours. So if you're attending 2 classes a week, or if you're watching the replay of 2 classes per week, that's about 3 hours right there. And then you're probably reading about, in some cases, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes per week, or there's a few chapters that might take you an hour. And what I would suggest you do is just read like 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, even on those chapters that are an hour long. Just read like 10, 15, 20 minutes, a little bit per day. It's kind of like if you were to take a bite of food, you would like to take a small bite, chew it for a little bit, and then swallow it. Whereas if you took a real big bite, it would be harder to chew it and harder to swallow it. So by you choosing to take smaller bites of reading, where you're reading 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, you'll be able to digest it. You'll be able to reflect on it for 24 hours or 48 hours, and then you'll be able to take the next bite. Whereas if you sat down and you read the entire chapter in 1 hour, it's a lot of content and it's really meaty, and you don't give your mind any chance to breathe and really think about what it is that you had just learned. So by taking smaller bites, 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, you'll find that you'll be able to fit it into your schedule easier, and you'll be more readily able to reflect on it, retain it, and then benefit from what you've learned. As I mentioned at the beginning of the class, you would like to independently verify all the teachings. You're not interested in believing anything. There's no belief in the teachings whatsoever, including the cycle of rebirth. You never ever believe anything. Instead, you learn, you reflect to independently verify, and then you practice. And that's where the real transformation is happening, in the practice. One of the challenges that you're going to experience as you learn the teachings of the Buddha is you will learn the teachings and you will start intellectually understanding them. And you'll even reflect on them and you'll independently verify that they're true. But then as you're moving them into practice, you're going to find that sometimes it's a real challenge. If you're putting pressure on yourself to be an expert or a master right away, you might understand something intellectually and you might get really frustrated that you can't practice it right away because you're challenged because of the challenges in the mind. So you'll see as we get started in the next 3 classes that as I introduce you and go into detail about some of the various teachings of the Buddha, you'll understand them intellectually, but you might really struggle to move them into practice because that's where the real transformation of the mind is occurring and you're getting rid of the pollution of mind. So you're going to need to cultivate a certain amount of patience on this path to enlightenment, where you patiently understand and be kind to yourself to understand that it's going to take you some time. You can't just read the book, snap the fingers, and get to enlightenment. It took the Buddha 6 years to get to enlightenment himself. So it's going to take you a few years to get to enlightenment, but you gradually work towards the goal. You don't try to rush. You don't try to hurry up. You can't hurry up and get to enlightenment. You need to gradually train the mind. One of the biggest myths about the teachings of the Buddha is people think that he sat down under a tree, that he meditated, and he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't true. It's a big myth about the teachings of the Buddha. Instead, if you learn his teachings, he talks about this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And you know this to be true because everything and anything you've ever learned in life has been exactly the same way. Whether it's learning English or some job occupation or some other skill or ability you have, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And this path to enlightenment is the same way. So you're going to need to have some patience with yourself, and you're going to need to be kind to yourself because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to trip over your feet. You're going to have certain struggles and difficulties. But that's what I'm here for in these classes twice a week, where you can ask questions and you can get help in all those other ways, like scheduling a personal guidance session, sending a private message, and posting in the Facebook group. As we go forward, I will help you to establish a daily meditation practice. We're going to start with breathing mindfulness meditation, and then I'm going to help you to learn loving kindness meditation. And I'm going to develop this over a period of 4 sessions, where you're going to see the schedule here in a moment, where there's going to be 4 Wednesdays here at the very beginning where it's going to be devoted to breathing mindfulness meditation. This Wednesday coming up, a few days from now, I'm going to be teaching you thoroughly, point by point, how to develop a breathing mindfulness meditation practice. And then we're going to actually do breathing mindfulness meditation together as a class. And then you'll need to do that on your own during the week. And then each Wednesday, I will be going over a 4-part series helping you to develop your breathing mindfulness meditation practice. This is a primary style of meditation that the Buddha used in order to get to enlightenment. So I'm going to be teaching you what it takes to develop this practice. We're going to be talking about what meditation is, because it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and arising certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And you're doing this in the seated, lying, standing, or walking positions. And I'm going to be helping you and walking you through and showing you what is it that you're eliminating from the mind and what is it that you're cultivating, so that you can see yourself the why. Why are you meditating? And connecting that to your journey to enlightenment. And then we're going to do the same thing with loving kindness meditation. After our 4-part series of breathing mindfulness meditation, there's going to be a 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. And I know this is quite a challenge, but I'll just share this, is that if there's other things that you've learned related to the teachings of the Buddha, as best as possible, see if you can set those things to the side. There's certain myths, there's certain misunderstandings, certain things that people have maybe been exposed to that you might need to set aside. One of them I just mentioned: if you've been taught that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and he instantly got to enlightenment, this actually isn't true. You're going to need to set that aside and realize that it's untrue. You can see through the words of the Buddha that I share with you that he doesn't say that at all. He actually says just the opposite. He talks about it being gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. But depending on what you might have seen about the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you're going to find that certain things that you might currently understand or think that you understand about the teachings are in conflict with what I'm sharing with you. And where you see that, whether you're reading, whether you're in a class, whether you're watching one of the videos or podcasts or what have you, be sure you ask questions. You can say, hey, David, I read this book, or I studied with this teacher, or I went to this retreat, and this is what they shared with me. Why is what you're sharing different than that? Can you help me understand? And then I will share with you, and I will help you be able to independently verify with what I'm sharing is the truth. Because while there's 500 million people in the world who consider themselves practitioners of the teachings of the Buddha, it's very rare that somebody is learning and teaching based on the original words of the Buddha. It's very rare in the world for somebody to have access to the original words of the Buddha, because they've been hidden for a very long period of time. That's why the title of this book series is The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden, because these teachings have been really hidden for a long period of time because they're in 45 large volumes of books. There's this big book. This is just one book. The teachings of the Buddha are in 45 large volumes, this big, right? This is about 10 centimeters thick, or 4 to 6 inches thick. And there's 45 books, and it's very expensive to print it out. So the average person doesn't even have access to these books. Even the average Buddhist temple that you go to doesn't have these books. So depending on where you've actually learned, they most likely weren't studying and they weren't teaching based on the original words of the Buddha. So what I'm sharing with you is based on those original words of the Buddha, and oftentimes it's going to be in conflict with what you have learned if you've learned things other places. Because the Buddha died over 2,500 years ago, and people have changed his teachings since then. So what we have in the world is we have an enormous amount of misunderstandings. In fact, there's a chapter dedicated in this book, chapter 24, which is titled Misunderstandings of Gotama Buddha's Teachings. We're going to get to that at the very end of this program, where I'm going to be going through a lot of the common misunderstandings that you're going to see in the world. So as you are noticing those conflicts or those differences or things you've heard, and you're not quite sure why I'm teaching what I'm teaching, be sure to ask those questions, because I can share with you why I teach what I teach. I can show you the original words of the Buddha, of what he actually taught, and I can explain it to you in a way that you can independently verify it and practice it and see the truth for yourself. Now, if you've never learned the teachings of the Buddha and this is your very first time learning, then you're probably at a little bit of an advantage, because you're a clean slate and you can now learn with the original words of the Buddha, and you can then learn, reflect, and practice, and you can see the truth through learning with the original teachings. But that doesn't mean if you've learned other places that you're somehow, going to be hindered from getting to enlightenment. You certainly can, but you're going to need to confront those areas where there's conflict or there's differences and ask questions to get clarification, so that then on this independent journey that you're on, you can learn, reflect, to independently verify and practice and get rid of any kind of things that the mind is holding on to that isn't truly the teachings of the Buddha. Because if people modify a Buddha's teachings, this is to their own harm and to the detriment of many people in the world. The Buddha talks about this during his lifetime. He describes that one should not change his teachings, that as soon as you modify a Buddhist teachings, essentially they're not potent anymore. It's not the path to enlightenment. One of the things that a Buddha is doing during their lifetime, because they have such deep and profound wisdom about the path to enlightenment, is they're laying down lights along the path to enlightenment, illuminating this path as clear as possible so that as many people as possible can get to enlightenment during their lifetime. Well, if somebody changes and modifies a Buddhist teachings, it's like knocking over the light. It's like, putting out the light. And now the path isn't as clear anymore, and people can very easily veer off the path in one direction or another. So a Buddha is putting down these lights along the side of the path, making it very clear of what it takes to get to enlightenment. So that's why you would like to base your life practice on the original words of the Buddha, so that then you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach. And then you don't believe those books. You don't believe your teacher. You learn, reflect, and practice and be able to see the truth that the condition of your mind and your life is gradually improving. Then I would like to share with you something that I share with students who are first starting with me, is that no one ever has accomplished anything great and magnificent through complacency. One of the things that you're going to probably be aware of as you start getting on this path is initially you might be really excited and gung-ho and kind of shoot out of the gates wanting to do so many things to learn these teachings. But then at some point, complacency might come in. After 2 weeks or a month or two, it's a matter of continuing to look at Facebook, or do I go meditate? Should I keep watching this TV program, or do I go meditate? There can be this complacency, this dullness, this lethargic, this lack of motivation and enthusiasm can come into the mind. When something's brand new, oftentimes there's all this enthusiasm and you can rush out of the gate towards this particular thing. But then over time, that can fade away. That enthusiasm and motivation might fade away, and complacency can set in. Where you see that complacency setting in, where the mind doesn't want to move away from that darkness, it wants to stay in this life of doing unwholesome things or unwise things, or just continuing to brainlessly surf social media or what have you. Recognize that for what it is, which is the mind just being dull and lethargic and complacent, and decide that you're going to investigate the teachings. You're going to pick up the book. You're going to come to class. You're going to reach out to your teacher for help. You're going to meditate. This is what you would like to do, is move the mind towards investigating the teachings, arising some energy so that you can see the joy start coming into the mind. Because as you investigate the teachings and applying energy to doing that, you'll start seeing this joy spring up in the mind, because the mind's becoming more pure and more clean because you're clearing out the pollution. But if you allow the mind to be complacent, dull and lethargic, unmotivated, unenthusiastic, then your mind's just going to stay in that darkness and that dullness. So where you see complacency starting to come into the mind, the sooner you get it out of that complacency, the better. If you allow the mind to stay complacent for an extended period of time, it's a lot harder to get it out of the complacency. So you'd like to catch it as soon as possible and move the mind towards meditating, reading the books, coming to classes, getting personal guidance, and so forth. Essentially, this group learning program, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. It's just like everything else in the world. If you apply dedication, determination, and diligence, you're going to get a lot out of the 7 months program. And some students even choose to take it more than one time. So as you apply your dedication, determination, diligence, you'll see that the benefits will come to you. But if you allow the mind to be complacent at any time, you would like to move the mind away from that complacency and get it moving towards the investigation, arising this energy, and then you'll see this joy springing up in the mind. And then lastly, before I open up the questions, this is what Francis was asking about, is kind of like what our schedule is going forward. Well, the first Sunday, which is today, this is all about just kind of welcoming you, kind of introducing you to the group learning program, helping you kind of get your bearings about what is available and kind of what is going to transpire as we go forward, and what you're invited to come and learn and develop your practice. But then starting next week, the second, third, and fourth Sunday, what I'm going to be doing is diving into the Eightfold Path. This is the path for all humans to enlightenment. The Eightfold Path is broken up into 3 sections: the wisdom section, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be having 3 individual classes using the original words of the Buddha so that you can see what he taught. And then I'm going to be teaching you through the original words of the Buddha in those 3 classes, where we're going to take this really deep dive into the Eightfold Path. And then on the 5th class, which is 4 weeks from today, then we're going to be looking at the 10 fetters, which is the pollutions of the mind, and the 4 stages of enlightenment. So in those first classes, the 2nd class through the 5th class, which is essentially the first 4 kind of meaty classes where we're going into content, you're going to have a very broad understanding of the path to enlightenment, as well as a very deep understanding, because it's the Eightfold Path that is going to eliminate the 10 fetters from the mind, these 10 pollutions. And then the mind's going to move through these 4 stages of enlightenment until the mind is actually enlightened and experiencing no discontentedness whatsoever. And again, you're not going to get to enlightenment in 7 months, but you're laying a really good, solid foundation. So from the first 4 classes, you're going to be able to really be able to see what is the path to enlightenment. And then you'll be able to progress forward from there. On the 6th Sunday, I'm going to start in this book from chapter 1. And that's the point where we're going to be going chapter by chapter by chapter. And you'll be interested in reading each of those chapters as we go forward. So if you would like to start reading some of the book now, I would say read the preface when you get the book, and read chapter 4 and 5, because that's what I'm going to be teaching over the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Sundays. So chapter 4 and 5 is what I'm going to be teaching, but then we're going to start over at the beginning of the book. So you can read the preface in chapter 4 and 5. And then on the Wednesdays, the first 4 Wednesdays, I'm going to be helping you develop your breathing mindfulness meditation. Starting this Wednesday, I'm going to be going through teaching you in detail what breathing mindfulness meditation is and how to actually do it. And then we're going to actually be doing it together on each of those 4 Wednesdays. And then you'll be able to develop your practice outside of class on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and so forth. You can be developing your meditation practice over those first 4 weeks. Then, having gotten some stabilization of your meditation practice and starting to get more confidence with it, then we're going to bring in the second form of meditation on the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th Wednesdays, where I'm going to first use the first class to go in detail and explaining to you what loving kindness meditation is, why we do it, what you're transforming in the mind, and then we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation together. And I will develop over those 4 classes the ability to help you to develop your meditation practice, where you can then be doing breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation in your daily life. And then if you would like to learn Buddhist chanting, I'll be teaching a 4-part series on Buddhist chanting. And then from that point forward, then we'll be rotating between breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. If you're ever interested in seeing what the individual classes are and what the topics are to learn, you can go to this website, bit.ly/group learning program. And you can access that from our website too. You can go to buddhadailywisdom.com and click on online learning. And the very first thing is the group learning program. And you can just click on that link and it'll take you to the full schedule. And you can see the dates and the topics for each individual class. And just understand that you are going to miss classes here and there, and that's what the recordings are for. So let me see what questions you guys have about anything we've discussed. This is everything that I have to share with you today. I would like to just open up to any and all questions that you guys might have as you're getting started. You can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. Francis, I see your hand is up. I don't know if that's a new question or if that's from your old question.
Maybe that was the old question.
Okay. Okay, I see there's someone in YouTube that's typing out some Thai language. I apologize, I can't read Thai. I can speak some Thai, but I can't read Thai. So if you were able to write that in English or translate it for me, that would be wonderful. Let's see, we've got some questions here in Facebook. David, I know there are different branches of Buddhism. Can you verify what you teach? Sure. So there's essentially three main branches of Buddhist teachings that exist in the world. There's what's called the Theravada Buddhist teachings, which are mainly in Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, and southern Vietnam. These are the real focal points for Theravada teachings of the Buddha. And these have really spread all throughout the world. You'll see them in all different places of the world. The word Theravada, this means teachings of the elders. And in this tradition, they look to the Pali Canon as the original source teachings of the Buddha. And they consider that to be the original words of the Buddha. And they're not interested in changing or modifying the teachings of the Buddha. So the Theravada tradition, for all intents and purposes, is considered to be the teachings that are closest to the lifetime of the Buddha, without any of the modifications and changes. At least that's what this tradition teaches. Some people refer to Theravada tradition as early Buddhism because it's the earliest form of the teachings that existed during the lifetime of the Buddha. People would probably say this is the tradition that I teach. I consider that what I teach is the words of the Buddha, but most people would probably consider that I teach the Theravada tradition because I'm in Thailand and also I'm looking to the Pali Canon as the original source teachings, and I'm not interested in modifying or changing his teachings, but instead helping you to see what he actually taught so that then you can experience the enlightened mind. After the death of the Buddha, about 500 to 1,000 years later, there's other traditions that spawn. There's Mahayana tradition, which you'll find mostly in China, but again, that has spread all throughout the world. You even see that in Vietnam as well. And then you'll see the Vajrayana tradition, which is mainly in Tibet and some other places as well. And again, that's spread all throughout the world. This is the tradition that the Dalai Lama practices. So these traditions that you see, Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, there's also different branches of those that kind of spawn off in different ways, like Zen Buddhism and other forms of Buddhist teachings as well. There's many different collection of teachings that people are labeling as Buddhism or Buddhist. But if you ask me, there can only be one type of Buddhism because there was only one Buddha. So it's whatever the Buddha taught, that's what Buddhism is. But really, this word Buddhism and even this word Christianity, it didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha or during the lifetime of Jesus Christ, because those individuals were just sharing teachings that were helping benefit people's lives and help them improve their life. When the Buddha awoke from enlightenment, he didn't say, I discovered a new religion or anything like that. He said, I discovered a better way of life. And then he shared that better way of life. And then later, people labeled it as Buddhism. And then people came up with these labels of saying, I am Buddhist, or I am Christian, or I am Hindu. Well, in reality, there's only one collection of teachings, and that's the words of the Buddha. That's what actually leads to enlightenment. All these different changes and modifications and branches that are all labeling themselves as Buddhism, in my opinion, they can't be Buddhism because there can only be one Buddhism because there was only one Buddha, and that's the words of the Buddha. So if somebody really held me up against the wall and said, what tradition do you teach? I would say the Theravada tradition, but in reality, I don't even think of it as that and kind of labeling it. Instead, I just think of it as the words of the Buddha, the path to enlightenment. I teach you what the Buddha taught during his lifetime so that you can experience the same mental state as the Buddha. Here's some more questions here. It says, my mom studied with the original words of the Buddha in the Thai language taught by Bhikkhu Kukrit in Thailand. I sometimes discuss the teachings with her and sometimes listen to his teachings. What are your thoughts? Prajang Kukrit is definitely teaching the words of the Buddha, and he's doing that in Thai. His temple, main temple, is in Bangkok or Krung Thep, and they've created some other temples around Thailand as well. If somebody speaks the Thai language, I would normally send them to Prajang Kukrit because they aren't able to necessarily learn with me. If somebody is able to understand English, then they can learn with me because Prajang Kukrit, he doesn't speak fluent English. He teaches everything in Thai. So I think Prajang Kukrit is an excellent person to learn from. And by you talking about the teachings with your mother, this is going to help both of you guys bring the teachings up into your mind and be able to retain them more and be able to practice them more. And then with you being able to also learn them in English, it's going to help you as you enter into this wider international community of people who are speaking in English, that then you'll be able to speak in English and share the teachings and communicate on the teachings, discuss the teachings, and bring them up into your mind as well. And I see your other follow-up question here is, would it be wise for me to continue doing that while learning with you? I think, yeah, there's no harm whatsoever in learning with Prajang Kukrit because he's teaching the words of the Buddha. If you can maintain your teachings in Thai, and then you can maintain your teachings in English, you might be able to start drawing the comparison between the two, and this can be helpful for you. But if you find it to be too much and too confusing and too much content, you might decide to either stop learning with me and just learn with Prajang Kukrit, or stop learning with Prajang Kukrit and just learn with me. But if you can manage all that content and manage it in both languages, there's no harm in learning it in both of those languages. The important thing is to learn with the original words of the Buddha. That's really, really important. If you're reading a book from any number of different authors and many different books that are out there in the world, I always suggest for people for their first 1 or 2 years to really focus on these collection of resources that I share, because you can get really confused by going to places where they're not sharing with the original words of the Buddha. There are some teachers like Prajang Kukrit, he requires people who ordain with him to stay with him at his temple for 6 years before they ever go out anywhere else and learn anywhere else. I don't do that because I'm not set up in the same way as Prajang Kukrit, but I definitely encourage students at least a minimum of 1 year, maybe even closer to 2 years, just focused on using these resources, these books, these videos, these classes. And remember, you're not believing the teachings. You're learning, reflecting, and practicing. And then after that, as you got a really strong foundation, sometimes it's actually helpful to go look at other teachers' resources, because then it'll help confirm what you've learned, because you'll see how other people are sharing the teachings and they're not practicing with the words of the Buddha, and it can help you to clarify what it is that you've actually learned. So there are some students who've been learning with me for many years, and they will sometimes pick up a book or attend a class with somebody else after having learned with me for a period of time, and then they'll discuss with me what they've learned with another teacher, and then I can help them see with clarity the words of the Buddha, and it helps to solidify the teachings that they've learned. So you're welcome, Rhonda, and I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can pronounce your name properly. I know you've written it out for me before, but I hope I've pronounced it properly. But if not, feel free to correct me and let me know. But you guys are both welcome for the answers that I provided for you. Let's see. We have some more questions coming in on YouTube. I found the Spotify podcast. Okay to start the chapters 4 and 5 there. Sure, absolutely. That's the audiobook, and you're going to see the text on Spotify, because now Spotify allows podcasters to put videos on there. So I uploaded it on Spotify as a video, but it'll be audio on all the other podcasting sites. And I see some thank yous here in YouTube. You're very welcome. And let's see, there's some questions here coming in on Zoom. Let me go back. No question, but would like to express gratitude for your teaching. You're very welcome. Pleased to help you, Stephen. Looks like Vladimir has a question. Is it okay to do loving kindness meditation and breathing mindfulness meditation in the same session? For example, first 2 minutes mindfulness meditation, after that 5 minutes of loving kindness, and finally 6 minutes of mindfulness meditation. This is actually the way that I teach it, is I teach you to do breathing mindfulness meditation first and then move into loving kindness and then finish up with more breathing mindfulness meditation. If you're doing it to that exact amount of time, then that's your choice. But that's usually how I structure it, is breathing mindfulness, loving kindness, and then more breathing mindfulness. So feel free to do it that way. You'll find that it really helps. But when you're in meditation, if you're noticing that your loving kindness meditation, if you're noticing that it's really permeating in the mind and you're getting a lot of loving kindness into the mind, you don't need to do that breathing mindfulness at the end, because what that's doing is cutting off any thoughts that are coming up in the mind. So if you're noticing that you've done breathing mindfulness and then loving kindness, and the loving kindness is permeating in the mind, you can just continue with that. You don't necessarily need to put in that additional session of breathing mindfulness meditation. Let's see. Thai language in YouTube chat by DVJ is Satu. Okay. Thank you, Punya. I see you there. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions here, I don't think. Let me just verify this. All right. Yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions. Francis, you confirmed that your hand was from before. After you have your question answered, Francis, you should be able to put your hand down. And then that way, if there's a new question, you can raise your hand up and I'll know you have a new question. Is this still the old question or you have a new question?
No more question, David. I'm done. Thank you so much for your sharing.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, just take a look at Zoom. There should be a way for you to put your hand back down. That way we'll know if you have a new question or not. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to officially end class today by thanking all of you for choosing to start this program and decide that you're interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha. Because as you learn these teachings, it's going to help you. It's going to help those that are close to you, because you're going to be causing less and less harm to the people that are around you. And it's going to help all of humanity become a more peaceful, loving, and kind society. So I really admire people when they choose to do this inner work, because I know how challenging it is. It's really challenging in some situations. It can be a real struggle. But of course, there's a lot of enjoyment along the way too. So you kind of balance out your practice with this enjoyment and this fun, as well as this, challenges that you'll face as you go forward on the path to enlightenment. And I know that it can be really challenging. So as you're meeting with those challenges, feel free to reach out and ask for help. You're not bothering me. This is what I do. I dedicated the rest of my life to sharing these teachings with anybody and everybody who has a sincere interest in learning and practicing these teachings. And I'm so confident that these teachings work to get to enlightenment that I provide them at no cost. I let anybody and everybody have access to these teachings, whether it's books, videos, podcasts, audiobooks, whether it's classes, courses, or retreats, the personal guidance. I make everything available at no cost, removing the obstacles so that you can then just step forward with your energy and effort, with your dedication, your determination, and your diligence, and then you can experience the results of this enlightened mental state as you move closer and closer to it. So I'm very confident that you're able to make progress on this path, and that's why I do what I do and provide it at no cost. And I just have such deep admiration for people who choose to do this work, because in some cases, staying in the darkness, that's like the easy thing. But in reality, it's actually quite difficult to continue to experience sadness and anger and frustration. But in there's no effort, there's no energy that's applied, there's no real work that's being done, but you're constantly experiencing the misery and despair. By doing the work and applying the effort, which I admire people for doing, then you can move towards this peace and joy, and you'll see that it's working for yourself. So as you need help, just reach out. I'm here to help you. And we'll see you guys either in Wednesday's live class or in Sunday's live class. And as you decide that you use the replay, just feel free to use the replay and just pick up in the next live class, because everybody's schedule is going to be a little bit different. So I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee ka.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.